What is up, everybody? Matt Parrino here inside Highmark Stadium, just a little past midnight here, about an hour after the Buffalo Bills completed an absolute throttling of the Tennessee Titans. And it's funny, Ryan Talbot. I was kind of taking the pulse of Bills Mafia on social media anyway, early in that game. And there was a lot of stress. There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of frustration with the way that was going. But you take a closer look at how that game even started. And I think I tweeted it out at halftime. It was 4 possessions, 2 touchdowns, 1 field goal, and a turnover on downs. And I think it's something that, when you're used to seeing this offense operate the way that it has, it's something where, frustration, I guess, happens when everything doesn't go perfectly. But it's a whole different world that Bills fans are living in here now in 2022.
Yeah, it's a much different scene than 10, 15 years ago when it was the revolving door at quarterback, when you were just hoping that they would hold on in these primetime games if they even showed up and performed well at all. So to come out here and to be upset about that first half performance, listen, I get it to a certain extent. They were sloppy at times. They were a little too amped up, some bad penalties. Maybe that factored into it. The Titans being a team that the Bills had struggled with the past 2 seasons, but to go into halftime up 10 points, to then put on the absolute beat down that they did in the second half. I think if you're a Bills fan, you have to be thrilled after these first 2 weeks, after seeing what you did to the reigning Super Bowl champions and the AFC's number 1 seed last season.
Yeah, and you also got to be thrilled when you can get out to the tailgates. The scene out here was absolutely amazing today. And to get yourself stocked up every home game, or if you're going on the road, head over to Tops Markets. Falling leaves, crisp weather means it's our favorite time of the year, tailgate season, and you can win the ultimate tailgate accessory right now from Tops just by purchasing brands you already love. Head over to topsmarkets.com to get more details. All right, we're going to start. We have so much to talk about, so much that we have to break down from this game, Ryan Talbot. And I think the best place to start is Derrick Henry, because going into the game all week long, it's, over and over again, press conference to press conference, Tremaine Edmonds, Jordan Poyer, Von Miller, Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, they were all asked about Derrick Henry's big 3 touchdown performance last year. And you come into this game and it seems like you're trending in that direction early on, right? When he's able to, power one in near the goal line. But we're talking about a performance in this one for the Bills where they absolutely shut him down. I mean, this was one of the most helpless efforts I've seen from Derrick Henry in his entire career. And, I always thought it was going to be interesting to watch him come back from that injury, because usually the running style, the physicality that he plays with, and the how much he needs to be right below the belt. I mean, his legs are super important in what he does. How that projected after he got back, how it was going to look. And he just, to me, has not looked like the same player since that injury. I wonder if he came back a little bit too soon. That remains to be seen. 13 carries in this game, Ryan, 25 yards. He averaged, this is crazy numbers, 1.9 yards per carry. This was a dominant effort from this Bills defense.
Dominant when you also consider the fact that 2 of their main defensive tackles weren't even playing in this game. They were inactive. Ed Oliver, maybe the star of the defensive tackle position. Tim Settle, a big free agent signing. They're both inactive. They promote 2 guys from the practice squad, and yet this defense showed absolutely no fear of Derrick Henry. I cannot remember a game, at least in the Bills-Titans history, where he was hit and stopped in the backfield so many times, or hit and stopped for short gains. I saw Christian Benford come up and make a big play in the run game. I saw Greg Rousseau. You saw all these defensive linemen, linebackers just kind of shooting the gaps, going in there and making that first contact with him, where you're right. Maybe he's not the same guy he was before this injury, because, we would see him shrug off contact in the past, keep the legs moving forward, keep gaining those positive yards, but they were just few and far between tonight on Monday Night Football. For the most part, when the Bills made contact, he was going down after maybe an additional yard or two. So kudos to this Bills defense playing shorthanded going into the game, dealing with some injuries in game, and still having such a dominant performance against one of the best backs in the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, and I want to get to, some more nuance into why I think that performance was possible. We're going to talk about a couple really good performances today on the Bills defense. But before we do, a couple comments I'm seeing in here already. We should give an update on the injuries, because that was one of the scariest injuries I've seen live.
Yeah.
Dane Jackson in the first half, going in for a tackle late in the second quarter on Traylon Burks, and Tremaine Edmonds just so happened to come in at the most inopportune time for the play as Burks was kind of falling to the ground. Edmonds left his feet and just plunged right into Dane Jackson. His neck kind of went back, and they showed the replay a couple times on the broadcast, and it was really tough to watch. And I think it was about 5 minutes, a little more than 5 minutes. Jackson was down, and he was being tended to by EMTs here. He was taken off the field via ambulance. And some really good news out of the locker room. Damar Hamlin, one of his good friends, they played together at Pitt. He's talking. He talked to him after the game, and he said that he's doing good, which is a really good sign. Jordan Poyer also added that he's doing well. The Bills almost immediately put out a statement a few minutes after the injury when he left the field, saying that he can move all of his extremities. So I think we're in the best possible situation for Jackson, considering how scary that injury was.
Yeah, when you saw it live, when you saw the replay, the fact that his head, snapped back, his neck snapped back, it was very scary. The one thing that happened after the play that seemed to be kind of missed a little bit was he was on his side a little bit, and he kind of slammed his hand and mouth guard down to the ground. So you saw him move a little bit, but then it got, like you said, very scary, very fast. Not a lot of movement. When you see the ambulance come out so quickly, it's usually the card, it's usually something else for these injuries. But when the ambulance comes onto the field, it's something very scary, very legitimate. So like you said, hearing post game that players were communicating with him, he was giving encouraging signs in terms of his status. You couldn't ask for anything more after seeing something like that, where it could have been a lot worse, possibly, based on what we saw there, Matt.
Mm-hmm. The Bills pretty banged up right now. I mean, if you look across the roster, going into this game, Gabriel Davis was a late scratch. He suffered an ankle injury on Saturday. And of course, we did our preview show probably about 20 minutes. We finished 20 minutes later. The Gabe Davis news broke, which completely changed the complexion of the game. But what's interesting enough, we both put, had the Bills scoring close to 40 points, I believe. What was your final prediction?
38-17.
Yep, 38. I had them 41. And so I think we both thought that they were going to score points, and we didn't change that, when it got to this game, because I thought that there were other ways they can move the ball, score the ball. Jay Kumaro with a big bomb today, but Davis out. And then on the defensive side, Ed Oliver and Tim Settle, they didn't play today. They were held out. Brandon Bryant was called up, CJ Brewer, and then Jackson leaves the game. Micah Hyde leaves the game with a neck injury. He told Jordan Poyer that he's doing okay. Jordan Phillips with a hamstring, he left the game. And then Matt Milano with a stinger. I mean, this is concerning going on the road next week and facing the Miami Dolphins.
In a short week, nonetheless. You go from this long extended break between Thursday and Monday night, and now all of a sudden we're sitting here early Tuesday morning as we're doing this podcast, and it's like, man, you're counting down the days until Sunday in this matchup of 2-0 teams in the AFC East, and so many significant contributors on this team either got banged up tonight or were injured in the first game or injured in practice, like Gabe Davis. And you're right, it's concerning. You need this team. You want this team as close to 100%, not just because it's a big matchup within the division. Two of the undefeated teams remaining in the league, which there's not too many of those left right now. It's also because you want this offense to keep, building that rapport, building that chemistry that we've seen over the past few seasons. You want these defensive players to get in, to stay fresh, to have that rotation going. So there's little things you're hoping for. And obviously with all these injuries that happened tonight, you're hoping for the best in all cases. With such a quick turnaround going to Miami, where it's going to be very hot, very humid early in the season, the Bills are going to have to be very cautious with some of these players and in terms of whether or not they can go on Sunday afternoon.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, thank you. If you just got in, obviously discussing the Bills 41-7 drubbing of the Tennessee Titans. Mitch Morse, also Bill W. over on YouTube, mentions he was hurt. He did return. I thought Greg Van Roten, after a shaky start, I thought played pretty well until Morse was able to get back in the game. I'll be interested to go back and watch the entirety of the game. But Josh Allen really was able to, he made a couple of bad throws in this game, I thought. Almost like he was a little bit antsy in the pocket. And I know facing Jeffrey Simmons from time to time, that can happen. But if you look at the stats in this game, only 1 sack for the Titans, 3 quarterback hits. I'll be interested to look at the pressure numbers, but when they're available. But this wasn't a game where I felt that the Tennessee front was able to really have a big impact. And I think you got to credit, the starting offensive line for the Bills, especially on the interior with the moving parts of Van Roten in there for a little while. That was nice to see. I mean, it was just Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs just took over this game. It's almost like they were going to force the issue until the dam broke. And then all of a sudden, it's like a waterfall in this place. It's fitting that we're 20, 25 minutes away from Niagara Falls, because I almost felt like the Titans drowned in that second half. And, Allen kept, finding different ways to get Stefon Diggs the ball. And then obviously the big play was the deep touchdown pass, but that's 2 straight weeks. One of the big offseason storylines, Ryan, was how are the Bills going to unlock that deep passing game and get Stefon Diggs going back down the field? This is 2 straight weeks now with 40+ yard touchdown passes. And I think teams are just starting to realize that there's so many ways that Josh Allen can beat you at all 3 levels that you can't just focus all of your attention on Diggs.
No, and first and foremost with the offensive line, Van Roten had some snaps that I thought were questionable low, especially it felt like low into the left a lot. I'll have to go back and rewatch that. But he held up okay in blocking. The offensive line, there's room for improvement in terms of run blocking, but like you said, they did a nice job tonight protecting Josh Allen with the 3 quarterback hits, 1 sack allowed. In terms of Allen having a few throws you would like to have back, I almost wonder, Matt, if it's the fact that the Titans knew the Bills weren't going to run on them, especially early in the second half. The Bills had pretty much no luck in the first half. Devin Singletary had 1 nice run, but then after that, everything was pretty much stonewalled. Zach Moss was getting stopped on those short yardage situations. So, eventually, kudos to Ken Dorsey for this. He pretty much said, we can't run against this team right now. We're just going to pass. And it felt like every single play was a throw for Josh Allen. And eventually I think the Titans just kind of said, okay, we know they're not going to run the ball, so we can at least maybe make a few plays here and there. They had some batted passes. They almost had an interception in the end zone, but more times than not, Allen had the right answer to this defense. Diggs going against some young cornerbacks that were just completely unfair matchups. But then also these other guys stepping up. You mentioned Kumaro, 2 for 50, I believe, with 1 being like a 39-yard reception. You had Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder. Maybe they didn't fill the stat sheet, but they both converted first downs or came close to it. I think McKenzie was 1 yard short on his. Crowder, again, the moving the chains. Dawson Knox being more of a factor. They needed other guys to step up in this passing game, and it happened tonight. So like you said, there's just so many weapons. Even when your 1B, Gabe Davis, is out, it's hard to stop this offense from working because Allen is so his precision is there in terms of what he sees, what he's reading from these defenses. The double moves are starting to work. If he has enough time, you can only guard these guys so long, and it leads to those long touchdown passes. So kudos to Dorsey, kudos to Allen and this entire offense for what we've seen through the first 2 weeks, Matt.
Money Jones on YouTube with the super chat. Josh Allen threw double the touchdowns and 1,500 more yards once Diggs got to town. How much of Josh being great is Diggs as opposed to Josh just progressing? And, to start with, I think one has to have something to do with the other, right? Like I think you look at the great players in this league. Patrick Mahomes has had one of the most dangerous weapons in football for his entire career, and I think the development that you've seen in his game is predicated on the fact that he's had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and sure, Hill's not there anymore, but he still has Kelce, and they're able to figure things out. And he's now at a different level in this league to where he's seen almost everything, and he can adapt more easily. And so, yeah, do I think that Josh Allen would be the player that he is today without Stefon Diggs? I think I could say no, definitively. But just getting a great player doesn't necessarily mean you're going to develop, without question. And I think the way that he has progressed even since he's gotten Diggs and the player that he's become and the way that he wins and the way that he's able to kind of operate some of the throws that he's made consistently the last 3 seasons at all of the levels, that to me is where the real progress is shown. But without Diggs, would he be the guy that he is today? I think it's safe to say no.
Yeah, listen, it works both ways. I mean, look around the league. Look at what Tyreek Hill has done early in the season for Tua, and the fact that he's taken some balls that should have been intercepted and turned them into gains. That he's been open on broken coverages, and that helping Tua make some big plays there. Stefon Diggs certainly helped Josh Allen in his development, but let's not also sit here and act like Josh Allen didn't make a lot of his receivers put up their best seasons to date. Diggs had his best season ever with the Bills. You had Cole Beasley. You've had John Brown. You've had Zay Jones. Not necessarily guys that are crushing it across the league right now elsewhere if they're no longer with the Bills or, in the case of Brown, out of the league. He has this effect on players too. It wasn't that long ago, that they had an undrafted free agent in here. And he was making plays on the field, and now he's on like his 3rd, 4th, 5th team in this league. So Josh Allen has made a lot of these receivers better, but sure, when you add a premier talent like Stefon Diggs, that's going to help Josh Allen as well. It certainly works both ways, Matt.
And I think that it's to Josh Allen's credit that he was able to have the game that he had today without Gabe Davis, knowing that no matter what they had in the defensive backs room for Tennessee, they were going to focus their game plan in trying to take away Stefon Diggs. And part of the reason you can't do that is because Diggs, like he likes to say, is him, right? That's the in quote these days. And one of the viral videos that came out of the Rams game was him on the sideline calling himself a demon. And I think I hashtagged that today during the game because he was playing like a demon, man. He was playing like he was possessed out there. And so there's part of that, right? But as Brian says here, as long as Josh Allen is under center, these injuries don't feel so damning. He's a generational talent and transcends the other guys around him. And I do think he raises guys' level of play, and I think he also, what makes Allen so special, and I think that you kind of can put only a couple of guys in this pot. I'd add Herbert in there, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, in that they sometimes negate the downfalls of their offensive lines, right? Like on plays where maybe somebody misses a block, it's not as bad of a situation because of the improvisation that some of these quarterbacks have. And Allen tonight, I mean, he made a couple plays out of structure where you kind of were like head scratching, was like, oh, that wasn't a good play. Like there was a couple short yardage plays at times where the Bills offense just kind of like, caved in on itself. And Allen had a bad play a few times. So it's never going to be perfect necessarily, but I don't think that any quarterback playing in this league is perfect. I mean, Lamar Jackson had a spectacular game. I mean, I watched that game against the Miami Dolphins, and in the 4th quarter, he just, he couldn't keep pace with the ferocious comeback that Miami was putting on. And that's this league. Some games, you got to just keep making plays over and over again. Now, this was a kind of game where the defense for the Bills kind of met what the offense's energy and held up its end of the bargain.
Yeah, appreciate the super chat from our friend Brian here, but I agree. I feel like Josh Allen, when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, one of those franchise QBs, you're always going to be in it. You're always going to be in the conversation of a Super Bowl contender. Think about, obviously Tom Brady has some great talent in these Tampa Bay rosters the past few years, but there was some average-ish talent on some of those New England teams. Obviously, he had the greatest tight end of all time in Gronkowski, or one of the greatest tight ends. But when you have a Brady, when you have a Mahomes, when you have an Aaron Rodgers, you're always going to sit there and say, there's a chance they win it all. There's a chance they go deep into the playoffs, because as long as you have that guy at quarterback, you can compete on any Saturday, Sunday come playoff time, because they play on both days of the weekend, against any team. And I do feel that way about Josh Allen. I think the whole league feels that way about Josh Allen.
Yeah, thank you here to D Nice. Smash that like button on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel as well. We're over 7K. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Victor the Great says he only knows how to mash the like buttons, though. So he said this is tough. It's all right. Mash it, smash it, whatever you got to do. Speaking of fun ways to say things, when Von Miller got to Buffalo and the first time that he met Tremaine Edmonds, he asked him what he wanted him to call him, and he said, "Just call me Sav Maine." Right? That's what Tremaine Edmonds like to go by. Maine Savage, right? Or Sav Maine. And so after tonight, I think Von Miller is saying, "I'll call you anything you want. You play like that." And I thought it was interesting listening to him talk after the game about the demeanor of the team. And I want to pull out this quote and talk a little bit about it for a minute. He said, "Whenever we're up, we keep saying to each other, 'Don't blink. Don't let our foot off the gas.' It's a killer instinct. It's a blood in the water instinct. I don't know what it was before I got here, but now we're pedaled to the metals. We have an attitude of domination. We're not playing the game to just win the game. We're playing the game to dominate the game. We got a team full of killers, and it's led by our quarterback and our head coach. The leadership on this team, from Brandon Beane all the way down to the janitors and the infrastructure of the team." And I think it's interesting, Ryan. It's like, you felt that today. I mean, the Bills had every chance once this game was 24-7, just cruise the rest of the way. And not only just the defense, and of course the pick six kind of sealed it, and they kept getting the Titans offense off the field. But this offense was blood in the water is the perfect analogy, because I felt like Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs, this offense, they felt like a bunch of sharks that were just going to keep chomping until, dinner was finished.
Yeah, and look across the league the first 2 weeks. Think about how many teams had big leads or sizable leads only to kind of give them up later, to lose the game altogether, much like the Ravens. The Ravens really could have had 35 points at halftime. They got stopped at the 1 yard line on one drive. But it looked like it was still a pretty decent lead when you're up 21 in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden it dissipates. It's gone before you know it. So I think that, the way that this league is, you need to have your foot on the gas pedal at all times. But I also think it goes back to McDermott maybe learning from some of these early years in his tenure with the Bills, where there were some games that got away from them late because they got a little conservative. They weren't aggressive enough when they needed to be. And you learn those lessons over time. Obviously, you can point to the playoff game last year, but that just had to do more so with who got the ball last. But there were times early in McDermott's tenure where people thought you need to go for it in these fourth and short situations. And now he is a lot more aggressive about it. It's a reason why the Bills didn't punt for so long this season. It took a while to get the punter out there on the field. The Bills were going for it.
They got a new trick play, Ryan.
They do. They do. That's right. The end over end punt that leads to fumbles. So worked pretty well tonight, I must say, Matt. A really good debut from Martin as well. Someone that probably flew under the radar, but averaged almost 50 yards per punt. I think it was 48.7, if I remember correctly. And good directional kicks. That last one was right near the sidelines. I think all three were actually near the sidelines. So exactly what you want. You want to kind of limit what they can do with it. And when they can't field it, heck, that's even better.
Yeah, and there were, some performances that I really want to dive into tonight, because these are some names that I think we talked a lot about in the offseason, that it was a situation where if they hit, if they take the next steps in their games, and we'll get to them in a second, that's when this defense becomes potentially really scary. We're going to bring up our value toolsy players of the game. And it just so happens to be two players that I want to get into here and talk about in this segment that I think have their performance today was indicative of what I think this defense can be at its best and what makes this team so difficult to play against. So let's start with your value toolsy player of the game, Ryan Talbot.
Yeah. Matt, first, what are your thoughts on breakfast for dinner?
Big fan. French toast, pancakes.
I think Greg Rousseau is a big fan of that too, because this summer Von Miller said he was feeding gunpowder and gasoline for breakfast. It's clear he had breakfast for dinner tonight because he was running on gasoline and gunpowder against the Tennessee Titans. Listen, I watched him play, and he didn't fill the stat sheet. He had one of the few sacks in the game where he just lined up as a 3 technique and just bowled through the offensive line of the Titans to sack Ryan Tannehill. I saw him get into the backfield and show no fear, taking on Derrick Henry one-on-one and taking him down. He made play after play. He was always around the ball, right there, pushing guys back. You can see his confidence growing week after week. And that's not just including the first 2 weeks of the regular season. Throughout the summer, I saw his confidence growing when we were at St. John Fisher University in the preseason too. And now through 2 weeks, he has 2 sacks. He's becoming that consistent presence that the Bills were envisioning when they drafted him in round 1. How much of that has to do with Von Miller? Probably a good amount, because you have to account for a guy like Miller at all times. But Rousseau is making the most of this new opportunity. So he is my toolsy player of the game, Matt. What about you?
Yeah, I love it. And to your point, Rousseau, he made so many impact plays tonight. And this is a week removed from when I think AJ Epinesa and Boogie Basham maybe stole the headlines a little bit, and he grabbed them right back. I mean, and I thought Epinesa was really solid tonight. I thought he made a couple of good plays himself. There was one play on a Derrick Henry run to the left. I tweeted about it, where it was almost like a shoulder shiver. And it's almost like the Bills watched the Shout podcast, because we talked about the physicality that they were going to have to play with to really throw Derrick Henry off of their game. And I think all 3 quarters, while Derrick Henry and the starters were playing, that the Bills really met that challenge from a physical perspective. And the guy leading the charge for me was Tremaine Edmonds. This was like, I saw a couple people tweet out like this was the best game Edmonds has had in a Bills uniform. And that may be the case. I'd have to go back and maybe chart the games a little bit. But it was a situation where he was just so consistent. And then the splash plays came because of that consistency. And I was talking to him in the locker room after the game, and just asking him, like, when it's going that well, like, what's the mindset? Like, is it something you can channel in future games? And it's like, you know what it is? It's like when the good plays are happening, you're chasing those good plays. It's almost like you enter a vibe, if you will, on the field. And it's just, you're playing in a certain level, a certain like consistency. And you saw it play out on the field there. The splash plays are great. And that's something that I think a lot of people are going to focus on from this game. But I thought some of the just, run of the mill, tackles, being around the ball, reading blocks correctly, getting through spots, and just being kind of ominous. That's what he really is. He is like this force on the other side of the ball that, we've talked about it. NFL players and coaches respect this guy. Von Miller talking about, the fact that he thinks he's one of the best interior linebackers in the NFL. He played like it tonight, and he's my toolsy player of the game because, they needed that from him with a couple of defensive tackles out. I felt like he really helped set the tone. And for him to do that, before the game, when I talked about this, and I think I retweeted a clip that I was on from a show or something like that. One of the responses from a fan was, Tremaine Edmonds being physical, has that ever happened? And it's like, I know he gets a bad rap, and I know that like he's polarizing, and people are, they tend to bang on him a little bit. But I think that there have been times when he's demonstrated his willingness to be physical, and I thought it was consistent for 3 quarters tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for the people that kind of bash on Edmonds, go back and look at some of the defensive linemen that were in front of him and the fact that they weren't making plays up front. Maybe he almost felt like he had to be overly aggressive. Maybe he felt like he had to try to get up there and make plays, and that led to some of those over pursuits, some missed plays, because the guys in front of him weren't doing their jobs. I think now that he knows that he has all that talent in front of him, that they're doing the job, they're getting the job done, it allows him to play more freely, play more with more physicality, get after the ball carriers like Henry, shoot through the gap and just get after Ryan Tannehill like he did tonight. Those are confidence building plays. Those are plays that you see from a guy that believes in the players in front of him, believes in the players on the back end, and it's a good thing to see, Matt.
Von impacting Greg a ton. Wow, he looks so good. And yeah, I mean, if you're going to go back and look at the win rate tonight from Von Miller, I bet you it's going to be pretty high. He was in Tannehill's lap several times, and it's just a situation where Tannehill getting rid of the ball. So, I mean, Jack Donnell over on YouTube, thanks for the super chat. I totally agree with that assessment. Let's go to, where do you want to go next, Ryan Talbot?
Let's go to something I've seen in the chat a little bit, the inability to run the ball. I've seen it. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think more specifically, they're talking about in short yardage situations. I've seen that from a few people here. How concerned are you right now, Matt, with the fact that in these third and short, fourth and short scenarios, the Bills are really having trouble executing when they're trying to get those yards on the ground?
So I don't want to position this as an anti-Zach Moss take, because I do think that there is a world that that the Bills, maybe is a better way to put this, can live in, where Zach Moss is effective. I mean, he had one really solid run tonight. I still think that there's potential there, but I think the Bills are doing their running game a disservice by not handing the keys to Devin Singletary. And I think it comes down to what they maybe learned last year when they did that, was that it was so much easier to rely on certain plays because you knew what you were doing in certain situations. So instead of like having this kind of platoon effect, Devin Singletary can kind of get himself going in a game. It was another situation tonight, and I thought going in, the Bills might try to spread the wealth in the backfield. 11 carries it ended up being for James Cook because he ran a lot in the fourth quarter. That doesn't really count. 6 carries for Singletary, 3 carries for Moss. So they really didn't run the ball a lot. So I mean, sure, was it not working? Yes, but I just think that there's not enough cohesiveness as a unit. You go back to some of Aaron Cromer's Rams teams, right? When Todd Gurley was still super effective back in the late 2010s. And I mean, the dude was carrying the ball 20 plus times a game. Mm-hmm. And how many times in his career has Devin Singletary had that many carries? And I think that they're definitely setting up for what is going to be next year if the Bills aren't able to re-sign Devin Singletary. They want to keep Zach Moss in the mix, and I get that. But I think they would benefit from shrinking down the package for the other running backs in the run game and let Devin Singletary eat in that department, and then dial some stuff up for James Cook in the passing game.
Yeah, earlier in the show, we sat here and we were talking about Ken Dorsey being able to adjust on the fly when the run game's not working, pass the ball. When's he going to make that adjustment now in the run game itself, in the running back room? And maybe it's week 3 against Miami. Maybe it comes a little bit later, but I think he has to sit down and look and say, okay, we've tried to divvy up these carries a little bit. It really hasn't panned out. They've all had their moments of decent runs. Singletary I think he had a rush of 16 yards tonight. Moss had one around 17 yards. And then obviously Cook had that long run late in the fourth quarter against a lot of reserves, mind you. But for the most part, they were kind of being stonewalled, losing yards, getting no gains. So it's up to him now to kind of say, should we give Singletary the bulk of these carries like we did late last season when Brian Daboll was here, and it really kind of paid off for him, and he had multiple weeks of 70-plus overall yards, and he was really good against the Patriots in the playoffs in the wild card round. You want to get one guy going. It's not saying you have to go away from Moss and Cook entirely, but make him your lead back. Give him double-digit carries each week, that being Singletary. That 12 to 15 range, I think, is a good sweet spot if you're going to run the ball that much. But tonight it was it was a lot of different things. One, the backs just couldn't get any they couldn't get past the defensive line for the most part in that game. There are some missed blocks and missed opportunities. I think that 4th and 1 play after the Bills got stonewalled, I think on the Zach Moss run, where Khalil Shakir just completely missed on his guy, and that led to Josh Allen leading to the pass that throwaway pretty much that was a turnover on down. So there was some stuff up front, but the backs themselves have not been effective enough to my liking to sit here and say, going into Sunday, let's just keep spreading the ball around a little bit. Make Singletary your guy and ride the hot hand that's been the guy for your team since last season.
Speaking of riding the hot hand, get into Topps markets today. And right now through October 29th, every time you use your Topps Bonus Plus card to purchase participating brands like Pepsi, Campbell's, Smithfield, and so many more, you're automatically entered for a chance to win a tailgate and go kitchen for the ultimate tailgating experience. For complete details, visit topsmarkets.com/redzone. There's so many ways to save, so many ways to win at Topps. Thank you to Robert for the super chat here. He didn't even say anything. I feel bad, Robert. If you have something else to say, buddy, Robert Lewis.
He has a few things here in the chat too. He mentioned that Josh Allen it feels like a different aura than what Jim Kelly brought. But I like his last comment too. He said the defensive backs have the front 6 to 7 to thank. Benford had an awesome open field tackle tonight. Real quick, touching on upon these young cornerbacks. Yeah, Benford, really nice open field tackle. Or actually a tackle in the backfield on Henry, if I remember correctly. Kyer Elam comes into the game after a few series. I think it was his first series in. 3rd down pass. It's a short pass. He runs up into the play, makes the tackle, makes sure that the Titans can't move the chains that forces a punt. So little things like that have gone a long way for these guys. I do agree with Robert that obviously the way that the defensive line and the linebackers have been playing in the first 2 games, it has certainly made life easier. When you have Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde back there, it makes life easier. When you're keeping everything in front of you as well, and you're not allowing those big plays, it makes it easier for these young cornerbacks to kind of build their confidence, feel confident in what they're doing. But a tall task ahead coming up on Sunday, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, in Miami awaiting the Bills.
Even if Dane Jackson didn't suffer this injury tonight, I mean, there'd be concerns about next week. I mean, just watching what the Dolphins did against Baltimore. Now, I don't think that the Bills are going to allow them to beat them down the field. I think they're going to make him, play, off the line of scrimmage, the 10 to 15 to 20 yards in that area, and try to get to the ball carriers and pressure Tua with their front 4, which I think they're probably going to be able to generate that pressure. I'm not very impressed with the Miami Dolphins offensive line, and maybe they'll prove me wrong in that department. We'll see. But here's where I'm a little bit concerned, particularly with Kyer Elam. There was a couple plays tonight where I felt like Treylon Burks got across the coverage, and it even happened with Dane Jackson, I think, on one play on some of those crossing routes. And I don't think he has the high-end speed. He definitely doesn't. I think he's in the 4.5s, his 40 time, to be able to run away from, Kyer Elam, who's in the low 4.4s. That to me is like recognition-based. And when you flip the switch from, I know they had Cooper Kupp last week, and he's his own kind of animal to deal with. But when you flip the switch from Robert Woods and Treylon Burks to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, I mean, you're talking about super speed. And, it's almost like you're watching a movie in fast forward mode. And that's the area of concern I have. And it's exacerbated by the fact that Micah Hyde, there's serious questions now about his availability, suffering a neck injury, what that's going to look like if he's not available. It'll be a really good long look at Jaquan Johnson, but I don't know if that's the game where you want to get that look. So very interesting to see. I think the hope, if you're a Bills fan, is that you get reinforcements back in Ed Oliver, if he's able to get that ankle healthy. I thought that he was moving around late in the week last week pretty well. And that's the key too, because it's not just about the coverage part of it. Like, you got to hit Tua, you got to make him feel you as a defensive line, and then see how he responds to that. See if the timing is off. Maybe he doesn't read a play properly because he's still dealing with the pain that he's going through from the hit on the previous, set of plays. So I'm very interested to see how this pans out. And if they trust Kyer Elam and Christian Benford, if Dane Jackson can't play, do the rookies play? Because I think that there might be a path to the rotation remaining, and then maybe Saran Neal getting the look on the other side.
Yeah, Saran Neal, Cam Lewis is someone that was inactive tonight, and I think a lot of people envision him more so as a slot option behind Taron Johnson. But I think the Bills would, like you said, rotate, move guys around, try different things out. I think the most important key, though, is having Hyde back there along with Poyer to keep the defense honest. I think Tua knows that they're not guys that are going to give up broken plays very often, if at all. He knows that those big plays, that he's had in these first few games, some of them in which the defensive back hasn't turned around on underthrown ball and could maybe make a play on it. That's kind of what Poyer and Hyde feast on. If you underthrow that ball, they're going to make a play on it. They're going to get an interception. So if you can have those two safeties in this game on Sunday, that's going to be huge for this team with some young cornerbacks going against some tremendous wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
I wanted to talk about something too. I really was impressed with the Bills' usage of 22 personnel tonight. That's something that could get really tricky because we've talked about like the crazy lean that Sean McDermott and I guess Brian Dable have had on fullbacks over the years. I mean, we all remember, I think it was the Houston Texans playoff game when Pat DeMarco getting the long ball down the field. And you're just like, is that the guy that really needs the bomb down the field, the fullback? I'll tell you right now, Reggie Gilliam is built from something different. I mean, this dude looks like a tight end out there. I mean, when he got that giddy up going on the touchdown catch, I mean, he flung off two would-be tacklers, got out in space. You have Quentin Morris out there, who was the second tight end, flying out, looking for somebody to hit. Ken Dorsey has a ton of options. We were talking about OJ Howard as possibly that guy that could open up the playbook, a portion of the playbook for them. But I really think that this, to me, was the blueprint. Like the Quentin Morris is that second tight end. He's earned that role. He could do multiple things. He's almost like when you put Gilliam and Quentin Morris out there on the field, you almost put these two hybrid players that are interchangeable and you could do almost anything. You could literally, Ryan, you could go with Allen under center or in the pistol and then have those two guys out there, and even like Singletary or Moss behind them. You could be just doing all types of crazy power and run at him football. I'm just old school stuff. Got guys slobbering, thinking John Madden, getting real excited about it.
Yeah, Quentin Morris, he can line up in the backfield like a fullback to be that lead blocker. We saw it a little bit in the preseason. We know about the athleticism. He had a catch tonight for, I believe, 6 yards. Reggie Gilliam, though, you mentioned it, Swiss Army knife, and not just on special teams in terms of what he can do, but he can be a fullback for you. He can be a tight end for you. He can block, he can catch, he can run, you name it, he can do it for you. And we saw a little bit of that tonight. That first touchdown pass, it looked like initially like it wasn't going to go anywhere. There's two defenders right there. He makes contact with both, stays on his feet, and then he kind of runs around to the left side of the sideline, gets into the end zone for the first score of the game. He has two receptions in the matchup as well, one which he kind of hurdles the guy shortly after Josh Allen did his own little hurdle tonight. But then there was the play deep down the field where he was open, just a little bit high for him. He doesn't necessarily have the Stefon Diggs or Gabe Davis vertical jump or the timing of those types of plays down being a fullback / hybrid tight end. But I think those intermediate plays can really start to develop for him as the season goes on. And I have high expectations for Reggie Gilliam in this offense.
I thought this was a really nice game for Dawson Knox. 5 targets, 4 catches, 41 yards, and just real, trustworthy with the ball in his hands. I mean, he got popped on that play over the middle. And I feel like if you look across this offense, and, I think Gabe Davis could be this, but he doesn't really feel – it's weird. You watching Gabe Davis play, like he does a lot of things so well, but I feel like where he really excels is his work on the sideline. I think Dawson Knox can really be that physical presence over the middle. He's so willing to take hits there, and he made a great play tonight. I think it was like a 2nd and 15. He makes a 15-yard reception, sets the Bills up, gives them a first down. I think they went on to score. I can't remember if it was a touchdown. But a really nice game for Dawson Knox, who only had 1 target last week. I thought he responded in a big way tonight.
Yeah, that reception, you're right. It went for 15 or 16 yards because he caught it at the 14-yard point. That was the play that he got popped right away, too, held onto the ball. 2 defenders come in to try to tackle him, and at the end, it was almost like a frustration play by the Titans where when they tackled him, they kind of threw him forward over the first down marker, and it was kind of a blessing in disguise for Knox, the way that he was able to hold on the ball and then also move the chains on that because of the way that he was tackled and kind of rolled or got pushed forward. But good game from him. We've seen physicality early in his career and throughout his career. I can always go back to the rookie season, that stiff arm against a double stiff arm against the Bengals in that game, lowering the shoulder, running a guy over. It's in his arsenal. He's just a unique talent where he's faster than linebackers. He's bigger than players in the secondary. So he's hard to match up against. You can use him as a blocker. He does a little bit of everything. And, tonight too, I was really impressed with his performance because at one point he was off to the sidelines it looked like his ankle looked at. He wasn't wearing a sock. It looked they were moving his foot and ankle around a little bit for mobility, and then before you knew it, he was back out there and really didn't miss a beat. So real solid game for him as well. After a real solid opener too. I know he didn't put up a lot of receptions in the opener, 1 for 5, but he was great blocking in that game. So again, it just shows you all that he can do for this team to help them win.
I mean, Tops Markets, all that they can do for you, I mean, it's limitless. I know Russell Wilson is struggling out there in Denver right now, Mr. Unlimited. But I really do think Tops Markets is unlimited. Look at these deals, Ryan Talbot. Let Tops do all the work for your game day and tailgating spreads. Perfect for game day or any day. Visit Tops's Carryout Cafe for hot-to-go fresh large cheese and pepperoni pizza, $14. Jumbo chicken wings, 10 count, $14. Tops legendary breakfast pizza, large pizza, $20. Pizza or taco log, 6 counts, $7.69. Baby back rib sections, $5.99 a pound, plus subs, sandwiches, wraps, apps, sides, and so much more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone for the complete menu of ready-to-enjoy fan favorites. At 1 a.m, Ryan Talbot, my mouth's watering.
Yeah, love their breakfast pizza. But you're right. Great selection there. Head over to Tops Bills Mafia. Matt, seen a lot of comments in here about Jordan Phillips. So real quick, loved what Jordan Phillips brought tonight. Had a big hit on Tannehill at one point. But the one thing that you and I have both talked about since he was re-signed, the way that he can get the fan base fired up. A few tackles in the game, some right at the line. I think 1 tackle for loss possibly. Even if it was a short gain for the Titans, a 2-yard gain, a 3-yard gain, he would get into the backfield, wave his arms up and down. The crowd would respond. It got really loud every time he did that. So from a playing perspective, he's been lights out the first 2 weeks. From that emotional perspective, you love what he brings from that perspective as well.
No, I think that, that was some of the smartest money, Brandon, being spent this offseason. I mean, the Daquan Jones move was one that, all right, Star Lotulelei in totality was a whiff, right? Like, I mean, they spent a lot of money. I don't think he ever really delivered what they hoped. Even before the COVID stuff, I never think he really lived up to that contract. So the guy that he was going to go out and pay $6, $7, $8 million a year, and that's about in the range of what they're playing Daquan Jones, it was going to be somebody that was reliable. And, speaking of reliable, Robert Lewis just keeps dropping the super chats. My man, appreciate you. And all Phillips has done has come in here and done everything that he did a couple of years ago and more. I mean, he's at least at the end, he was starting. Like, remember, like he kind of crept past Ed Oliver on the depth chart. And then he was kind of in this quasi weird starting spot. Even when Ed Oliver was handed the job back, and he was kind of in this 3-person, timeshare. And it just felt like he was starting even when he wasn't. Now he's in a definitive backup role when Ed Oliver's healthy. And so I think it's a situation where he's handled everything well. I think he knows this is the best place he's going to be. He's going to go on the ride, right? Like, after being irrelevant for 2 seasons in Arizona, back to being like, this is the first chance in his career. Because the last year in Buffalo, the Bills lost in Houston. They weren't like a serious contender yet.
Right.
You know, Stefon Diggs wasn't wearing a Bills uniform. That was still a team that was in the building stage. Now I feel like he's back, and he feels like this is the time to really enjoy winning and a run. And he's playing like that. He seems so loose. Huge piece. And I thought Shaq Lawson was bouncing around a little bit tonight. I'll be interested to go back and look and see what it looks like on the replay.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned Brandon Beane being some of the best money he spent was on Jordan Phillips. I have to mention, though, Jordan Phillips made it very easy for him. About the second after he got released, he was sharing pictures of himself in a Bills uniform, pretty much saying, you know, come and get me. I'm coming back as long as you show any kind of interest whatsoever. So like you said, Phillips, after 2 years of really kind of struggling out of this system, out of this defense, he knew that at this point in the career, a return to Buffalo was the best thing for him. And through 2 games, you know, he is absolutely right.
All right. I think we're going to wrap it up on that note. Man, you guys brought it in the comment section tonight.
Love it.
It was super chats galore, people throwing around takes and comments, and this week is going to be wild. I'm hopefully, to set it up, I'm hoping to book a guest for Wednesday. I don't know who quite yet. Usually I'd go Marcel Louis-Jacques out of Miami, but I know he's probably going to be inundated with requests. So I don't know if I want to try to put too much on his table, but we'll have a guest driven show on Wednesday. The Bills will practice for the first time this week, Thursday. It's a short week, but I think Sean McDermott, it looks like right now, he's only going to go with 2 practices before heading to Miami on Saturday. So we'll have a Wednesday show that'll kind of lead you into that with a guest. And then we'll have a Friday preview show. I'll get to Miami on Saturday. We'll have you covered on Sunday for Miami Gardens. Will be another day, another game, and it is going to be a big one, Ryan Talbot.
Back to Sundays, Matt. I love it. I'm pumped. I am ready for that normal start time for sure.
Thank you to everybody for staying up late with us. Bruce Smith was phenomenal, by the way. If you didn't catch the video of the pregame words from Bruce Smith 78, it was a nice moment. I was able to get out of the press box, because in the press box here, you can't really hear whenever they're doing stuff over the mics. So, oh man, Robert Lewis dropping a bomb again. Robert, you're too good to us. So it was, just listening to Bruce talk about everything that happened a few months ago. It was it was emotional in here, and I think that the Bills fans, like, kind of, it got them going, being around each other, celebrating the lives of the 10 people that were tragically lost that day. It was a cool thing from Bruce.
Yes, it was. Yeah, and then the mural before the game from the Thomas family. Everything, well done tonight by the Bills organization, and obviously some former legends of the organization and their families.
He's Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. Hit that like button if you're new here. Subscribe to the show. We'll be back with 3 big ones this week. Take care, everybody.